Okay, so this weekend we will discuss about Active Directory, okay, identity and access management. So, okay, let's start with the introduction or basics of identity and access management. See, when you want to access something, or if you want to log into an application, or if you want to access a printer in the network, or if you want to log into a server or an application, you need something that could be authenticated, right? So that is what we call it as identity. So identity is just a thing that could be authenticated, or that can be authenticated. So we can also just say it is a primary security boundary, or that is the mechanism through which we are actually authenticating to a particular application or server or any particular network device. And we also have access management. So access management is nothing but restricting access to individuals based on their business function, or based on their role in a particular organization. So there are two different things that are involved in any particular identity and access management. The first one is authentication. So authentication happens using different credentials, and authorization happens based on the job level, job role, and whatever activities they are supposed to do. So in authentication, what we generally do, we go and verify whether the person is verifying the credential, right? Verifying the credential, like whether they are entering the correct username and password. This is the process of establishing whether the person is claiming their if they are establishing the identity of a person, right? It is process of establishing the identity of a particular individual or an application. See, why I'm saying individual or application, last week we were discussing about backup, right? In backup, as I mentioned, in organization we cannot use a particular user account to take a backup or to configure a particular task. So instead of using a particular user account, we generally use something called service account. In Microsoft Azure, we call it as managed identity. Okay, so that is the reason it is establishing whether we are using the right user account or the service account. So this is something which establishes whether the user is who they say they are. Okay, we are just verifying whether they are claiming the right credential. So that is what authentication. Authentication is the first step. See, if you want to log into your laptop, you need to provide your username and password. And based on your access permission, based on your role within your laptop, if you are having admin privileges, you will be able to do complete activities. But if you have only backup operator role, you'll be only able to do a backup configuration. If you have some power user role, you'll be able to create users and do certain activities. So based on your based on your role, you will have some access control and limitation. So there are two portion in any identity and access management system. The first one is authentication. That is where you give your username, password, or you provide the access key or a secret access key, or you provide certificates. See, you remember when you connected to storage account, or when you connected to Azure using third party application or API, we used access key or secret access key, right? That is one method. And when you are accessing some application, you might also be using certificate or self-signed certificate and so on. When we configured the VPN, when we connected to the VPN connection, we used self-signed certificate or trusted certificate. So there are three methods of authentication primarily. Okay, so username and password, and we can also use the access key or secret access keys. We can also use certificates, which can be self-signed or trusted certificate. And nowadays, like, you have multiple factors of authentication, right? I'll come to the multi-factor authentication, but when it comes to single factor authentication, these are the primary methods that are used for single factor authentication. So with any of these particular credential, you will be able to log into your application or system. That is how we used to work, or we used to handle our systems, right? So let me just move on. Now, the second portion, as I told you, it is authorization, access management. It is process of establishing what level of access an authenticated person or service has. See, we already confirmed that we are the right person whom we are claiming. So this process, as I told you, it establishes whether the user is who they say they are. See, if I'm saying I'm Stanley, I need to provide my right password. So I'm confirming that I have the right credential. So that is the first portion. That is the authentication portion. Once after we log in, once after I log into the system, the second portion is authorization. So in authorization, so what is the stuff that we do? So we actually go and confirm. It is the process of, it is the process of establishing what level of access we have, what level of access an authenticated individual or an application have. See, if I have logged in with the service account, even with the service account, we might be able to configure backups for databases. We might be able to configure backup for servers. So we might also have restrictions for both individual user account and service account. So it is the next level of process where it checks what level of access or what level of permissions we have. So this is what we call it as authorization, what level of permissions or access level that the individual has got. So once authenticated, authorization process is nothing but it is role based access control. So based on your role in your organization, if you are a level 1 engineer or if you're a level 2 engineer, if you are an SME or if you're an administrator, this role based access control defines what kind of resources, application data that you could access. See, for example, with my ID, I can go and take some printouts by connecting to the printer, or maybe I will be able to configure backup. I'll be able to modify something on the database or virtual machine. So based on your role, you will be able to access different resources in Azure or in your on-premises systems, applications, and you can also have some level of access to the data. So maybe you might have modifying permission, or you might have read level of permission, you might have write permission. So based on the roles and responsibilities, your authorization, your access to the resources will differ, right? So now this identity, generally we call it as principal or security principle. That is the standard term that we use in different cloud platform. So we call it as service principle, or we call it as security principle. Okay, it all means the same, service principle, or we call it as security principle. Service principle, we generally use it for service accounts in the cloud. Okay, so I'll come to that now. Over the last 10-20 years, we have been using a lot of different identity and access management solutions. See, some identity and access management solutions comes within your operating system. See, for example, if you take Windows or Linux operating systems or Unix operating system, it has its own internal operating system level identity and access management solution. So you can have users created within your OS, and you can give permissions within that operating system. So this identity that you are creating at the OS level, you cannot use it on the network systems. But whereas you have solutions like Active Directory or third-party novel network directory, or there are many other solutions which can be used in your local area network. So I'll come to that. So we have most famous Windows Server Active Directory solution, which can be used on all the networked devices, or it can be used across your systems in your local area network. Whereas we also have nowadays cloud directory solutions like AWS, IAM, or we will go with Azure because we are learning Azure here. So Azure Active Directory, Azure, AWS, IAM, and different solutions, which are cloud level directory solutions, which can be used for providing access to your resources and services in your cloud. So we have variety of solutions, but um, all these solutions can provide identity and access management, but at a certain level. If you're creating user and username and password in your OS level, you can give access to different applications or different services within that operating system. If you're creating AD level users, groups, or objects, that can be used in your centralized local area network. Whereas if you are creating something on your cloud directory, you can use it across different online directories or online applications and services. So we'll get to understand more about this. But now to continue, so here I was talking about authorization, right? So authorization, let's add up some more inputs here. So we have got identity, which is used for authentication, and we have got access management, which talks about authorization. Right. So now we were talking about single factor authentication, but nowadays um, the solution has matured and we might have to use multi-factor authentication for a lot of our authorization and authentication procedures. Now, even with just authentication, we might have to use MFA. So we call it as MFA for multi-factor authentication. So what does this mean? What does multi-factor authentication mean? So these days, if you are logging into your banking sites or if you're logging in for doing some transaction online, so it is demanding username and password. On top of that, it is also asking you to enter some one-time password or one-time code. So you are having additional authentication procedures through which you are giving multiple factors of authentication. So earlier, we used to give either username and password, access key, or certificate. With that, we will be able to access the application or service or device with that particular permission. But now, things have evolved, things have changed. We have to organizations are insisting on multiple factors of authentication to avoid any security breaches or to avoid any users compromising the credentials. So one, if you have access to one credential, they will be able to access and get business access. I mean, get access to the business data. So now with multi-factor authentication, we have three different stuffs. Okay, something you know. Okay, something you know is what? So you know your username and password. So that is something which you already know. This is what I'm talking about: username and the password combination. You might also have access to our secret keys, or you might have access to the security questions and so on. So right, in some applications, it might ask you additional security questions in your banking or in some applications. You might also store some security question information. At times, it will ask a particular question and you have to answer it, right? And you might also use certificate copy, which you have got in your local system. So this is something the user knows or something you know, right? The user knows or something you know. The next category of authentication is something you possess. Okay, when you say something you possess, without your mobile device, you will not be able to log into a lot of your systems now. Even if you are connecting to your official network or official application, your mobile app, it can be there are a lot of mobile authentication application like Authy or Google authentication or Microsoft authentication. There are many different software application which generates one-time password, or even you can receive one-time password. This is like a code, right? It's a 6-digit code, or it's a kind of code that you will receive as a SMS, or you will get that in your mobile application and you will be able to log in with that. See, earlier, nowadays, a lot of people are carrying mobile and everyone has got access to these software token, right? Now, everyone has got a application, I mean mobile with operating system that supports this software applications like Microsoft Authenticator or Authy, Google Auth. There are many hundreds of application which provide this authentication, logical authentication service. So we need to possess this mobile device to get access to this particular software application or to receive this one-time password. So this is the second category. The third category is something you are, something the user is, or something you are. So when I say something you are, it kind of verifies the biometric properties. For example, right, this um, your eyelid, and your fingerprint, your face scan. So these are all certain stuffs which is unique to yourself, or it is unique to a particular person. So every person will have their own eyelid or eye scan is different, hand palm is different, and fingerprints are different, face scan is different. So nowadays you get a lot of different scanning tools which can scan your fingerprint, which can scan your eye scan, eyelid, or a hand palm or face scan. So there are a lot of different biometric devices which can scan and allow you to enter to a data center facility, or even logging into your data, I mean, what do you call laptops. Nowadays, it comes with a fingerprint. I mean, most of the mobiles are now coming with fingerprint property, right? Even it has got face scan, eye scan. A lot of sophisticated technologies has come, so with which verifies something you are, something the user is, right? Without you using your fingerprint or face scan or eyelid scan, it is not going to allow you. So this is verifying your biometric property. So now there are three different factors of authentication which you can apply for any application access or service access or data center access or device access. So first one is something you know, the username and password example. Something you possess, the one-time password that you receive in your mobile application, which if you don't have your mobile device on your hand, the token generation or the token generating device now is not going to work out. Something the user knows, something the user has. The user has is nothing but your mobile application or a mobile device. The last one is something you are, something the user is, where it is verifying the biometric property of a particular individual. So this is what we call it as multi-factor authentication. With multi-factor authentication, we go and verify all these different stuffs. Okay, so nowadays there is no more single factor authentication. We have started verifying a particular authentication procedure with multiple factors now. So let me, okay, fine. So the last one that I want to confirm is on the authorization. So authorization, it is just to verify what level of permissions you have and what is the role that you are currently performing. And based on the role of the individual, you will be able to provide fine-grained access control. When I say fine-grained access control, there are three fundamental aspects you can control access. See, if you talk about Windows, you know that you can go and give read-only permissions or read-write permissions or modify permissions, right? So in similarly in Linux also you have this RWX, right? Read, write, execute permission. So this is very common. So there are three fundamental stuffs which can limit you to just read the data, write the data, or modify the data. So we will come to that role-based access control and authorization procedure with which you can control access to a particular application or a device. Even in Azure also, you have mechanism to control access to certain resources and certain services by using it. So you have read only, read, write, modify, or you can call modify as full access, right? You can do anything that you want. And this is the process through which you are giving some level of access to an authenticated person. So first thing is authentication in any system. After you are authenticated, then comes the authorization through which it verifies what level of permissions you have, whether you have full access or modify access, read only access. Based on that, you will be able to access and modify any resources or application or data in cloud platform or even in your on-premises location. So any question to the introduction of identity and access management? So it is a primary security boundary through which you are limiting access to individuals and service account. So as I told you, in cloud, the service account is called managed identity. Okay, so it's equivalent to managed identity. So service account is used by an application or a service, for example, for backup, for patching, for any routine activities. We use these service account or managed identity instead of using a individual user account. So now we will get into what is Active Directory. Okay, so since we are learning Microsoft Azure, Active Directory plays a major role in this particular stuff. So let's go here. So Active Directory. So most of you might have at least some basic understanding about Active Directory. So Active Directory has been in existence since very long time. So Microsoft has introduced it way back in 1999 and 2000 time. Until then, so since then you have been using Active Directory extensively in your on-premises data center. So Active Directory we can consider, we can also call it as Windows Server Active Directory. In order to install this role or in order to activate this role, Active Directory role, you need a Windows Server operating system. So after we enable this Active Directory or install this Active Directory on a particular Windows server, so that Windows server becomes domain controller. Okay, so we are referring the Active Directory database as a particular domain or a particular directory. So we are using this Windows server Active Directory for your on-premises data center predominantly. So in your on-premises data center or in your on-premises network, so we are using this directory service to manage the resources in your network, in your local area network. Okay, so why I specifically mention this local area network? See, you can use this Active Directory centralized database to store objects. When I say it's a database to store objects, so the objects here refers to users, groups, your computers, printers. So whatever you have in your network, all the devices, users, groups, you can store it in Active Directory. So Active Directory acts as a centralized database for all your network resources. So the centralized database, once you create and store all these stuff. So if you have a printer on your network, you can allow a particular user to um, print or to do some scanning or whatever. Even you can allow them to log into a computer or to log into a particular operating system. So you can control both identification as well as authorization. So both authentication and authorization can be managed centrally using this Active Directory. So Active Directory domain controller, this domain controller will carry out the role of both authentication and authorization from a centralized system. So Active Directory is a centralized database which stores information about all your objects. Objects here refer to users, groups, printers, computers, servers, and so on. And this domain controller, once the Active Directory role is installed, this domain controller will verify and allow both authentication and authorization, right? So these systems are very much critical to your business, and because it stores business critical information or it stores business vital information, so you have to keep copy of the data that is storing, and as well as you have to have multiple systems to avoid single point of failure. So in order to avoid single point of failure, generally we have a primary domain controller with backup domain controller or additional domain controller. So once if there is any issue with your primary domain controller, your backup domain controller or additional domain controller will continue to provide services like identification or like authentication and authorization. So we can have this domain controller enabled on a Windows server. This Windows server can be on a physical server, or you can have it on your virtual machine in on-prem, or even you can have it in Azure VM also. Okay, so for the Active Directory role to be installed, you need a Windows Server operating system which is running on physical server or a virtual machine in on-premises, or even it is supported in Azure. Initially, when when virtualization was introduced, Active Directory was not of good support in on-premises. Later, Microsoft tweaked the Active Directory database to be supported on a virtual machine also. Now, within this Active Directory, we have many different services. Okay, and we are going to focus on a particular thing. Just a second. Yeah. So we have multiple different categories or sub roles. So AD DS. So ADDS stands for domain services. So it creates a grouping of your resources in a particular organization, and we call it as domain. And that is where within that domain we create and manage, modify users, groups, computers, group policies, and so on. Right? So this is the very basic thing that is used for having users, groups, computers, group policies, and so on. Then we have something called AD certificate services. So in certificate services, we store certificates and it can be for a public key infrastructure, or it can be trusted or self-signed certificate. And using the certificate, you will be allowing access to certain web applications or different applications, right? So this is another role within Active Directory certificate services. Next, we have Active Directory federated services. See, you can also integrate your Active Directory with third-party authentication system to have a single sign-on mechanism. So you can have an integration with third-party authentication system or third-party directory services to have single sign-on, so that you can do a federation between multiple different identity solutions. That is ADFS. It is for integration. It is for federation with third-party solution to have single sign-on. Then we have ADRMS, rights management services. So this is something like a kind of digital signing. If you are sending an email, or if you're logging into a PDF file. See, this is mainly for data protection. See, when you go for auditing and all, they will check whether your files are protected with signing, digital signing, or whether you have properly encrypted the data. It is mainly used in email exchanges, documents, and security guidelines, mainly for authentication purposes, or mainly for auditing purposes. The next one is ADLDS, LDAP services, or lightweight directory services, where it is mainly for connecting to your application or LDAP browsing, and so on. So now we are primarily focused on the very first one, Active Directory domain services. That is where we deal with your users, groups, authentication, authorization, and so on. So the remaining stuffs, it's a very vast topic. In on-premises, we know Active Directory plays a major role in every organization, and this is a kind of a lengthy conversation. We can discuss for 40 hours just on Active Directory, these different roles and services. But we are now primarily focusing on your what do you call this one, Active Directory domain services. Just a second. So now moving on with the content, we will get to understand more about what are the different types of Active Directory solutions that we can implement, or Active Directory domain services solutions we can implement. So to start with, AD domain services, it stores information about users, computers, and other devices on the network, and it provides you centralized authentication and authorization facility. And if you want to share some folders or files, or if you want to allow access to an application, or if you want to allow access to a particular printer, or if you want to have collaboration through Teams or Skype between users. So all those activities, all those login activities, authorization activities happens through this particular Active Directory domain services. So it is a centralized solution through which you give access. So now coming on to the varieties, or the variant of Active Directory, I'll just come to that. So you have multiple variants of Active Directory, or varieties of Active Directory. So AD domain services, which is your Windows Server Active Directory, this has been in existence since last 20-25 years. Okay, so it has been in the market, or it has been used by different companies for a very long time. So you have a Windows Server that is having a Active Directory role. We call it as Windows Server AD. This is mainly used on your local area network, on your on-premises solution. So you can have physical server or virtual machines on this particular for running this Windows Server AD. Now in cloud, we have one more variant called Azure Active Directory domain services. And we also have one more variant, which is called Azure Active Directory. So potentially we are having three different options for Active Directory. So the first one, you can go and install your Windows Server first, and then you can, sorry, you can have your Active Directory enabled on a Windows Server. The next category that you have is a kind of platform as a service offering. The next one you have is a kind of software as a service. It's a readily available service. So now the very first one, you can install this AD on a physical server running Windows operating system, or you can run it on a VM, or it can be a VMware VM, or it can be on a Azure VM. So it can be on any virtual machine. Okay, so you can run it on VMware or Hyper-V or Azure platform. You can run this Active Directory solution on a Windows server. It is either physical server or it can be on a virtual machine. So this is the kind of centralized management solution that we used to have in your on-premises for both authentication and authorization. Now, Microsoft is giving a solution which is a kind of readily available managed domain. So when I say managed domain, so they are providing domain as a service. In this category, what Microsoft does is the Microsoft is managing, takes care of the underlying OS, the underlying Active Directory database, backups, or OS, AD, and the DNS. If you have integrated DNS, and Microsoft also takes care of, Microsoft manages patching, backup, monitoring, and whatever synchronization, replication, configuration, and all those stuff. So we call this as managed domain. So Microsoft will manage the OS. Microsoft will take care of the upgrade, updates, all those stuff. So if even if OS needs to be upgraded, or Active Directory schema, or like a functional level in Active Directory needs to be upgraded, Microsoft takes care of that. They take care of the OS and the Active Directory stuff. As a user, as a customer, we have access to AD administration via remote console. So AD administration can be done remotely by the customer. So you will have Microsoft Management Console or Microsoft Saved Console, through which you can manage the AD remotely using AD administration tools. I'll show you how to use those AD administration tool to manage the Active Directory remotely. So we will not have access. A customer will not have access to the server. So we will not have access to the OS, so will not have access. Okay, so we will not have access to the physical VM server or the virtual machine. Even we will not have access to the operating system, and we can only control Active Directory, and that too you will have AD related activities. You can do full activities, so full access to DNS, group policy, and AD remotely. So you don't have direct access to this operating system. You cannot change the registry settings, or you cannot do anything at the system level or OS level. You have limited access on certain activities. You have full access to DNS, and I think group policy, we can consider that as a kind of limited access, or you can just say partial access. Whereas in your on-premises, you get full access to everything. So that is what Windows Server AD gives you. So if you want to have full access to everything, full access to OS, if you want to have full access to any activities that you want to perform, operating system, schema, Active Directory, registry, group policy, DNS. So in on-premises, you have full access to everything because you have OS level control. So we have OS level control, and we can do whatever we want. And here in on the premises, what we used to do is we used to have authentication done using traditional protocols, right? In Active Directory, for authentication, we are using we used to have something called NT LAN Manager authentication in the past. That was during the Windows 2000, and before Windows 2003, we used to have NTLM, NT LAN Manager, which is used to be the authentication protocol, but it has changed. Okay, it has changed to Kerberos. Kerberos has got multiple versions on its own. So this is mainly to have integrity or confidentiality or checking the credential. Authentication protocol is Kerberos. So Kerberos has got multiple versions based on your operating system edition and flavor. And now for authorization, we used to have this NetBIOS. NetBIOS is for authorization, for doing all authorization on your on-premises system. So we also have this federation concept through which you can integrate with third-party AD federation services. Uses the integration concept to enable single sign-on. To enable single sign-on, we use this federation concept, or we use this integration concept. We also have this access protocol. So for access, we are using LDAP. Okay, in order to browse your directory, or in order to browse your applications and stuff. So we use this LDAP on premises. We also have a secure LDAP. LDAP, yes, I think there is a difference in the port number. I think this uses 636, if I'm not wrong. So you can double check on that, but if I recall it correctly, it is 636. This one LDAP is mainly 389, where this is mainly for allowing access to these protocols. If you are using it over the network on different geographical locations, we have to provide network access on these port numbers. I just want to, okay, NetBIOS uses multiple ports. I think it's a range of port from 135, 137, and it uses multiple ports, 139, and so on. So it's not limited to these ports, but it also uses some other port numbers. So now, why I want to highlight these protocols is because, like Azure Active Directory or Azure ADDS, we need to understand what are the different protocols that are used. Now, comparing it with Azure Active Directory versus Windows Server Active Directory. So Azure Active Directory has got complete different protocols to do all these things, to do authentication, authorization, and stuff. So now, first question is, why we need Azure Active Directory when we have Windows Server Active Directory to do the authentication and authorization, right? So as I told you, this Windows Server Active Directory is a local area network or local network solution. So this doesn't work in wide area network. So it doesn't work in WAN or in the cloud space. Whereas Azure Active Directory solution, it is a kind of cloud directory, or it is mainly intended for the WAN, the wide area network, internet-based solution. It is internet-based directory solution, whereas this one is intranet. Only it works on your on-premises or your local area network, right? That's the primary difference. And Azure Active Directory is a identity as a service. So even the Active Directory is managed by Microsoft, and also the operating system, physical infrastructure. So this is mainly a software as a service, whereas this one is partially a kind of platform as a service. And this one, Azure Active Directory, it's like an identity as a service. So here, there is a lot of differences. I'll come to that. For example, there is a difference like flat directory, whereas here in your on-premises, we used to have hierarchical database. In your on-premises Windows Server AD, you can create different subgroups. You can have different OUs or organizational unit that denotes your region, location, different objects. You can group them into different grouping or different hierarchical regional classification. See, in some organization, they will have regional grouping like Americas and different sub companies, and within that we will have the users groups and stuff stored there. Whereas on Azure Active Directory, it's a flat directory. You don't have some hierarchical arrangement, or you don't have classification to have regional grouping and so on. So it's a flat directory. Okay, and the very important thing, it is internet based directory or internet facing domain. I would say it is internet facing domain or internet based directory solution. You can just name it that way. And see, when Microsoft had this initial solution, right? This directory services, or this first one, the very first version was a kind of in Windows Server or Windows NT. They used to have a flat directory. We did not have this hierarchical grouping and so on. So Microsoft started their journey as a flat directory, and now after 20-25 years, they have again gone back to the flat directory concept. So here again, as I told you, so Microsoft will manage OS Active Directory, and we just have to manage only the objects. So when I say manage only the objects, here we are talking about users, groups, and service accounts and so on. So we manage only the AD related actions. We don't have any control on the underlying database or underlying domain. So we just manage it. Now, if these Kerberos, NetBIOS, LDAP, if it is, as I mean, these protocols doesn't work on the internet. So that is why we need a separate solution called Azure Active Directory. So in cloud, in a wide area network, so what kind of protocol works actually? See, if you want to authenticate on the internet or in the WAN, you need to use security assertion markup language, SAML, or you can use OpenID Connect, or you can use graph APIs and so on. So there are many different authentication protocols that works on the internet, that works along with your URL, right? So we in Azure Active Directory, we are leveraging the different online authentication protocols like SAML, OpenID Connect, Graph API, and so on. For authorization, we are using OAuth, which is your open authorization solution. So Microsoft has leveraged the technologies, the protocols which are open source, and they have started using it for their online integration. So for we also have, for federation, we have WS Federation, which is for federating or integrating with third party. You can also integrate with using REST APIs, or you can also use some APIs driven solutions, HTTPS API, for integration. For accessing your systems or applications and stuff, we generally use HTTPS. See, if it is a legacy system, we can also still use HTTP, but HTTPS is the preferred way of accessing any particular applications or services in the internet space, right? Now, we have a solution which works on premises. We have a solution that works on internet, which is like a wide area network. And here, as I told you, there is a difference on how it works. So there is a concept of flat directory compared to hierarchical directory here. So Azure Active Directory can be used as a kind of extension to on-premises Active Directory. So if you have a hybrid model, if you have a hybrid environment where you have some applications, systems running on your premises in your own data center, and if you want to have some systems running on Azure platform and you want to grant access to Microsoft 365 or Intune or any Microsoft commercial applications. So what you can do is you can have the same users replicated to Azure Active Directory, and Azure Active Directory can act as a kind of extended solution to authenticate against online applications as well as your on-premises application. So it can be, you can use the same single user to log into your on-prem application as well as to online internet application. So that is what we are going to see. We will see how to integrate them, how we will use Azure AD Connect to connect two different databases or two different directory solution. Now we still have one more solution which is partially answered. So we have this Azure Active Directory domain services, right? So what is the benefit that you are going to get when you go for Azure Active Directory domain services? Nowadays, customers, they don't want to have this operational tasks with them. They don't want to do this regular backup, patching, monitoring, and they don't want to have control, or like they don't want to have the routine activities handled by them. So they want the management and maintenance to be outsourced to a particular provider. Example, Microsoft can take over that management and maintenance for the customer. So they actually own the operating system, they own the AD solution. So they are the best to take care of your operating systems and Active Directory domain database. Now, so what we can do as a customer is, see, if in case we need to migrate some of our um, on-premises protocol dependent application. So what are the on-premises dependent protocol applications? See, there are multiple Microsoft application which are relying upon these protocols for authentication and authorization. See, if you want to have Microsoft IaaS for your web service, okay, and this IaaS, it actually works for using this on-premises protocols. Similarly, if you have a Microsoft SQL database server, okay, so this DB server, it actually uses the on-premises technologies or protocols. Again, if you're using for mailing, if you're using Exchange server, or if for collaboration, if you're using SharePoint for storing your data, or if you're using Skype or on online on-premises technologies or applications which is developed using .NET framework. So these are all stuffs which uses which uses on-premises authentication and authorization, as well as the access protocol to allow access for your end users. If you want to access IaaS web server or database server or SharePoint or Exchange for mailing, even if you have created a Microsoft failover cluster or clustering concept, it uses the underlying Kerberos and NetBIOS for providing access to your system. Even Microsoft uses their applications like SCCM or MECM, Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, or SCCM for patching activities, for monitoring if you are using SCOM. So if you want to continue using these solutions in Microsoft Azure, okay, what you have to do is you have to use Azure Active Directory Domain Services concept. Okay, so only advantage that you get is you can outsource the management of your Microsoft. See, if there is any corruption in your OS, or if there is any corruption in an Active Directory database, Microsoft will help you to recover. They will monitor the synchronization. They will monitor the replication. A lot of Active Directory related, OS related activities will be taken care by Microsoft. That is the only advantage of going with Azure Active Directory Domain Services. This is a kind of platform as a service offering. So the platform here, you get OS, Active Directory, both managed by Microsoft here. So as a customer, we just have to manage the objects which you want to manage through a remote console. And here, even for see, I can keep listing. There are many other uh, tools and technologies which are still designed to work with Kerberos for authentication and NetBIOS for authorization. So if you want to bring these applications to Azure platform, so you still need to have access to these protocols and um, port numbers. So here, even Azure Active Directory Domain Services, it uses the same technology, same protocols for accessing your applications and devices on the network. So if you want to outsource the management of operating system and Active Directory, so you can go for Azure Active Directory Domain Services, which is a kind of platform as a service. So as a customer, we only have access to manage the domain remotely. We don't have access to the enterprise admin. So in on-premises, you know, right, we have multiple roles, and the enterprise admin has got full access. So we have access to, we are enterprise admin here. Whereas here, we only get partial admin access. So even for managing the domain or schema or whatever, you get only partial access. You won't get full access. If you want to change the functional level, or if you want to make some changes to your registry settings or schema, you are relying upon Microsoft to do those things. But you get the benefit of Microsoft will take care of any restoration. If there is any corruption, they will restore AD objects, users, groups, or any corruption. They will restore it. They will take the backup. They will take care of the replication, and they will ensure high availability, redundancy, scalability, capacity management. All those stuffs will be taken care by Microsoft. So you have three varieties of option within Active Directory that you can use currently. Okay, any questions so far on the varieties or variant of Active Directory? You have three variants. One is infrastructure as a service. So you can go and deploy it on a VM and on a Azure VM, and you can use it like an infrastructure as a service, or you can also go for PaaS offering, or you can also go for software as a solution or software as a service. So any questions on these comparison? Okay, should I take that as no? Okay, let's see how we can deploy these three solutions and how we can integrate these three solutions, right? So let's go there. Let's start with the Windows Server AD. So Windows Server AD, as I told you, it is there in the market since 1999. So almost it is close to 25 years. We have this solution. It started with Windows Server 2000 or Windows 2000 Server. It used to be called like that. After 2003 it interchanged, so we started calling Windows Server 20 2003 2008 and so on. So now we will see how to promote a server, how to promote a Azure virtual machine into a domain controller first. So we are going to see the infrastructure as a service option to start with. So no questions so far, right? Should I assume there is no questions? Okay, fine. Let's go and create a VM first. So you need a Windows Server operating system primarily to have your server turned into a domain controller. Okay, let's create a domain. Let's create a server first. Stan infrastructure as a service VM01 or infrastructure as a service domain controller 01. Fine, I'll go with Windows Server 2019. Okay. Fine, for CPU and 16 GB is fine. See, you need specific capacity for your domain controller. See, if you want to run a domain controller service, there is a prerequisite. There is a kind of minimum requirement for having your AD database enabled on your server. So it is based on the number of objects, number of users getting authenticated, and so on. So in general, there are three major portion in Active Directory. So I'll come to that. Okay, well, let's create this first. So we are going to deploy infrastructure as a service first, and then we will move on to the other categories. I think if we get 32 GB is also good. For now, let's go with 16. This is fine. So 3389 is enough. So let's go and create it. So see, now Azure has started giving the recommendation. So they are saying there are another region that might be helping you to save some cost and so on. So if you want to view the recommendation, they will tell you which region to choose to save some cost. See, if you're going with zone 3, you'll get better performance and better stuff. So they are giving some suggestions. Okay, currently I'm going with zone 1, where you might get better performance and stuff on availability zone 3. So Microsoft has started giving this, but that is fine. So if you want to change it, you can change it based on their recommendation. Or if you want to leave it, you can just leave that. Okay, so you can review and create it. That is for optimized performance. They are giving the suggestions. So based on the data center usage and capacity availability, so they started giving some recommendations. So let us create a VM, and then we will size the Active Directory solution on this Azure VM. Okay, it will take a couple of minutes to create it. So meanwhile, we will just go and create one more stuff. See, typically this Active Directory domain services or this ADDS, so that is the primary concept that we are going to explore, right? So ADDS. So Active Directory Domain Services. So from the name itself, it has directory, right? Directory is a database where you go and store your resources. So ADDS, Active Directory, it is active always. Okay, so Active Directory Domain Services, and within that, this domain or directory is nothing but a hierarchical structure. I'll show you how the hierarchical structure looks like. So we go and store your information or store info about our objects in a hierarchical way, in a kind of regional structure, or based on your business unit or based on your department. We go and structure the objects in a particular logical grouping. So you go and store the directory data, and you make this data available to all the users and systems in your network. So ADDS is a database which stores info about users, groups, and even about the users. It also stores a lot of data, right? So when you say users, it stores the name of the user, password of the user, and the personal details, phone number, address, and a lot of different things. Okay, and also it provides authorized users to access the information on the network. Now, this data store, whatever we are creating, it can be used for accessing the resources in your network, for accessing resources. When I say resources on your on-premises network, like servers, shared volumes or shared folders, printers, and multiple different systems or applications on your local area network. Now, in order to enable this logon authentication and authorization, as I told you, we are using that traditional protocols like Kerberos and NetBIOS. And in order to do some limits, or in order to control what kind of information or what kind of attributes a particular user can have, or a particular printer can have, or a particular group can have, we have something called schema. Schema is something which defines the list of attributes that can apply for a particular object. In some organizations, the default attributes might not be enough, so you can go and modify the schema. Schema is nothing but it defines the classes of each and every object. So where you can go and add additional uh, attributes, like if you don't have option like city, or if you don't have options like additional locations or geographical region, you can actually go and add additional attributes to your existing object. So schema defines the objects and attributes for a particular object in a particular Active Directory. It is a set of rules, I would say. Okay, what kind of mandatory attributes that we should fill, what are the different optional attributes, and so on. So there are variety of additional stuffs that you can learn in Microsoft Active Directory, like global catalog. There is a replication service that replicates the objects from one domain controller to another domain controller, and there are a variety of stuff. Now let's go and see where we are, and once after we deploy it, I'll explain little more stuffs on how it looks like, on what kind of stuffs we generally do on Active Directory related operations. There are a lot of stuffs you need to take into consideration when you go and design and deploy it. We need to understand what is the number of users, and based on the number of objects and users and authentication that happens, we can go and size your Active Directory. So it is based on customer environment, we will size it. So minimum we will have to start with at least 4 GB and 4 CPU and 16 GB of RAM, and based on the enterprise size or customer requirement, we can go and increase the amount of CPU, memory, storage, and the networking resources. So the system is ready. So once after we log into the operating system, in the older operating system, what we used to do in Windows 2003 and Windows 2008, we used to run a command called DC promo, domain controller promotion. So that command is no more, it has been deprecated. So this is to promote a Windows server as a domain controller. So to promote a Windows server as a domain controller, we use this command, but nowadays Active Directory has become a role in your server manager. Okay, we can go and install that role or deploy that role now. Yeah, if there is a question, yeah, please ask it. I could see someone is unmuted.
Stanley, basic the server 4 GB RAM with the
Mhm.
basic server. How many user can support with that?
Okay. See, it depends on the solutioning. See, if you're talking about Azure AD domain services sizing, so let me just show you this. So there is a kind of sizing mechanism for Azure Virtual Machine and physical server. So because like physical server, it has got physical CPU, physical memory, right? Whereas if you talk about Microsoft Azure, so you have virtual CPU, virtual memory, and so on. So the number of users and stuff, it differs from on-premises to the cloud. So let me see. There has been a benchmarking testing I've seen somewhere. They have clearly given you that specific stuff. How much? Let me just see. Just a second. Okay, your question is more on the premises or Azure Active Directory domain services?
On-premise also, on Active Directory also.
Okay, see, Azure Active Directory,
Both.
so this is the answer. Okay, no, not Azure Active Directory, Azure Active Directory domain services, the in-between one,
Domain
right?
service.
Yeah, in Azure Active Directory domain services, if you have 3,000 authentications or 10,000 authentications during the peak hours, you have to go for enterprise licensing. And this object is the question that you are asking about: users, groups, and the different printers, servers, laptops, desktops, right? So if you have 25,000 and above objects, you have to go for enterprise plan, and this one is the premium plan. See here, we are not sizing the CPU memory for the in-between one. Whereas for Windows Server AD, that is the traditional sizing, right? So that is the legacy one. I mean, we are okay, like Windows Server Active Directory sizing or prerequisite hardware requirements. So really, we don't have to, I mean, this is ADFS. Okay, we can also have this capacity planning tool. So we also have a lot of on-premises templates to size that. I did have access to the particular tool long back, but nowadays we are not dealing with on-premises. But still, yeah, we have to try and size your environment. Okay, capacity planning. So obviously, we need a 64-bit operating system, and it is supported on virtualization. If you get SSD hard disk, yeah, it will be better. And we also have multiple different categories, right? So now this is where you get the answer.
Processor and RAM. Yes.
Yeah. So for each user, it we need 40 KB to 60 KB storage size. And the database size, it depends on your operating system version. So for Windows 2012, it is different. 2016, it is different. So it is based on your operating system. And if you have 1,000 concurrent users for each core, you can have up to 1,000 concurrent users. So that is how you size your CPU. Okay, for each core, it's a logical core. Okay, so for physical server, the sizing might be little different. You have to check the server hardware tuning for your physical server
Mhm.
Active Directory. For Windows virtual machine, you go with this capacity planning for ADDS. So I mean, it takes few minutes to do the sizing. Okay, it all depends on the number of users, and see, if you look at the number of concurrent connections, you have to have as much of CPU based on the number of concurrent connections. So it will support each core will support 1,000 concurrent connection. And if for each user you have to have 40 KB to 60 KB, you'll always have the higher size. If you have 1,000 users,
Mhm.
1,000 users multiplied by 660 KB is your storage allocation size. See, in storage itself, we have three categories, right? In on-premises Active Directory, you have your database. Database is nothing but your NTDS, network NT directory service. That is where you store your information about your objects. And we also have your syswall, where you go and store your scripts, policies, and stuff. And we also have a separate folder for storing your logs. Okay, so I'm talking about the sizing for NTDS alone. So you also have to size your logging partition, and also your sysvol partition, where you store all your scripts and policies. There are three different categories within your AD domain services. For database, for log, for system volume, we have three different partitions. We will have three different system partitions. See, because when logs are quickly filling in, if there are a lot of logins, and if there is a malicious attack, if the logs are filling in, if the size of the partition or E drive or whatever F drive you are using, if that is getting filled up quickly, automatically your database will also come down. So that is the reason we generally have separate partitions or separate drives for each of these things, for database, for system volume, and for the log files. So the sizing that we are talking about is only about the D drive here, the database sizing. So based on your number of users or number of objects, you can have approximately 50 to 60 KB or 40 to 60 KB per
Mm.
object or per user. So that is how we generally size it. We used to have some templates. Okay, I will check if I have access to that template still. So we have a calculation example. This is mainly for your NTDS. So approximately, if you are having then a particular number of users, they have given you some suggestions. So you can size it. Okay, it is available. So this is generally done by
You have
your.
any like tools is available? Tools
Yeah, that's what I
we can
said. We
calculate
have
it.
some tools which I used to use it in my previous job role. I used to have it. So see, they have also given some sizing here, right? This is again, which is coming out of your calculation only. So we used to have some calculator given by Microsoft for calculating your processor, for your memory, and everything they used to give you. So let me find out if I have access. If I get that copy of that file, I'll send it across in the Google Drive. I'll upload it. See, this is not needed for your cloud role, but again, since you asked this question, I just thought of telling you how we generally do the sizing, capacity sizing. But for Azure, we need to understand which particular SKU or the license we need to choose on Azure ADDS. So this is important. Okay, so this is something which you need to be aware of, because here we don't have to size your CPU, memory, and stuff. Instead, we need to understand the customer requirement in terms of the number of users, concurrent connections, and we have to provide the appropriate licensing choice to them. So we need to give this suggestion to the customer. So we have three categories: standard, enterprise, and premium. We can use based on the number of users and the backup frequency. We can select it. Okay, we'll come to that. Yeah, capacity planning. It is a kind of effort that has to be focused effort. So we need to have an understanding on the number of users, number of concurrent connection, the criticality of the identity and database. We can go and have multiple servers, and we can have high availability. Okay, now I have logged into the system. I'll explain about Azure AD possibly tomorrow. We have a lot of things to cover under Azure AD. Okay, we will try to see ADDS, and we'll also try to see Azure AD Connect, which integrates multiple different database. Okay, let me just go here. And in the past, we used to have. Okay, let me mute the line. So in the past, we used to have this DC promo command. So as I told you now, it is no more in use. It is deprecated, and we have to go to Server Manager and install the Active Directory's domain services role. So as I told you, AD has got 5 different roles, right? If you want to install Active Directory domain services, we have to go and install it on the Server Manager. So out of these 5, we are going to install the first role, AD domain services. And before that, I'll just go and disable the firewall and the enhanced settings. Even after promotion of your domain, we have to come and check whether the Windows Defender firewall is preventing any domain connections. Okay, fine. Go to manage, go to add roles and features. So here on the roles screen, we will have the list of Active Directory 5 different roles that we are talking about, right? The first one is for PKI, public key infrastructure. That is where we have the certification authorities, and the certificate are getting stored for different applications. So this is where we go and store your users, groups, and different objects. This is what we have to enable now. So this helps you to do the authentication and authorization in your on-premises network or within your local area network. Even within a private network, this will work. This will not work only in wide area network. It will not work in the internet. It can work in a private network or in a local area network. The other services which we already talked about, so rights management services, it's mainly for establishing the digital protection for your documentations, emails, documents, and so on. And lightweight directory services is mainly for browsing your applications or giving access to the applications. And this is mainly for integrating with third party for single sign-on at the web level. So this is mainly integration or federation. So we have selected only Active Directory domain services. And now you have the option to go and integrate with your online directory service, which is nothing but Azure AD. If you want to integrate it, you can also connect it now, but I'll show you how to do that later. So now I'm just installing only the Active Directory domain services. After installing your Windows server, after deploying your Windows server, I've just started installing this role. So any other questions so far? This will take some time. Okay, it will take at least 5-10 minutes to get this deployed. So once after the role is installed, we will get option to configure the Active Directory. Okay, so once after we enable the configuration, we will go and take a quick break and come back. Okay, so let's wait for this installation to complete. Okay, so while this is happening, see, if you want to have your Azure Active Directory domain services, you have to go to your Azure portal and you can search for Azure Active Directory domain services, or you can just say domain services. Let's see. Yeah, Microsoft. So I mean, recently they have changed the branding for Azure Active Directory. They have started using Entra. Microsoft Entra is the new name for Azure Active Directory, and this has been used for both Azure Active Directory as well as Azure AD. So recently they have changed the name. So Microsoft Entra Domain Services, and this one is called Microsoft Entra. So this is where we have all the different online commercial applications connected to Microsoft. Okay, so now there is a different branding. So we can go and create the Microsoft Entra domain services. So Microsoft Entra domain services, as I told you, it is a managed domain service. You will have access to do domain joining. You can connect your printers or servers or different systems to the domain. You can join your servers, laptops, and stuff. You can also configure group policy. You have access to LDAP, Kerberos, and the traditional protocol, right? So this is the first thing. So you can still do whatever you do in your Active Directory domain services. See, after we have this Active Directory domain services, what we generally do, we generally go and do a member join. So members can be servers, laptops, your PCs can be joined to the Active Directory domain. And once it is joined, you can log in with your same credential, which is there on your Active Directory. Similarly, in Azure Active Directory domain services, we can do the domain join, we can manage, configure group policy. You can use the same authentication and authorization protocols. And again, we don't have to manage the OS and Active Directory. So that is completely managed and maintained by Microsoft. That is the biggest advantage we have. And the next point, for ease and simplicity, default options will be used during the deployment. And if you want to change the sizing, we can also change it. Okay, let me show you this. See, by default, Microsoft gives you a default domain name. See, whatever email ID that you have used, see, I've used this one, aravari@hotmail.com. So it will pick the name of the account followed by the domain that you are using from Microsoft. So that will be your first name, or that will be a subdomain name followed by onmicrosoft.com. So this is the default domain name that they will give you. But if in case you want to change it to your custom domain or your organization domain, you can enter it there. So this is the default domain. And if you have purchased something, or if you have a custom domain for your organization, we can use that domain as well. Customized domain name. So by default, you will get a domain which is on microsoft.com. So here I can go and choose a particular resource group. And this is where you go and choose the SKU. So based on the number of users, number of stuff, core services that you want, you can go and change the sizing. See here, if your database is very critical, you can go and configure daily backup on your premium configuration. If you want to have multiple forest trusts, some organization might have trust relationship with different forest or different organization. If you want up to 10 forest trust, you can go for premium. If you are having only less than 5 trust, you can go for enterprise plan. Right now, I'll just go for standard. That is more than sufficient for me. Yeah, that should be okay. So the pricing is very straightforward. Per hour, it is 15 cents for standard, 40 cents for enterprise, and $1.60 for premium. Okay, you'll get a couple of servers. Okay, that is why they are saying per set. Set means like they have two domain controllers created for you for high availability by default. Okay, now you can create your own virtual network, or you can also go and use existing virtual network. So if you have already created a separate network for your Active Directory domain controllers for shared services or for utility services, you can go and choose that particular VNet or subnet for your Active Directory domain services. So I'm going to create a new virtual network and new subnet. Okay, click on next. See, it says your subnet should contain one of the private IP address space. I mean, we already know that, right? When we discuss the network class, we know that we can only use these ranges of IP address, right? We cannot use any public IP address. So if you want to use it, you have to discuss with Microsoft, and you need to understand the different risks that are involved. Okay, so ideally you have to create a virtual network in the private IP range. Now, clicking on next, under the administration, it is asking us what are the different users or groups you want to have permission. So if I want to add some groups or stuff, you can go and add some members here. So if I want to allow Azure AD domain controllers, or if I'll show you how to create these users and groups in your Azure AD. These are all stuffs which are coming from your Azure Active Directory. Okay, so let me just add these ones. So I'll show you how to do these things later, how to create this. Okay, fine. So just close this, click next. So if you want to synchronize from your Azure, this Azure Entra ID is nothing, Microsoft Entra ID is nothing but Azure Active Directory. So if you want to replicate or synchronize from your Azure Active Directory to Microsoft Entra domain services, you can also do a one-way replication or one-way synchronization from Azure AD to managed domain. So what they are saying is, if you have some users groups created in Azure AD, you can also synchronize that to your Azure AD domain services. We can also replicate it from Windows Server AD to Azure AD, and then from here to Azure AD domain services, we can do a one-way synchronization also. So I'll show you how to do that, how to do those synchronization and replication. So I'll just say all, and then we will enable this. So every single username, credential, everything will be synchronized and replicated. So I'll show you after creating this how to log in using these credential. We will also do a member server addition, domain join, and so on. Let me click on next. So we have option to have legacy versions, if you want to enable TLS version 1.2 or 1.1, also NTLM version 1, if you want to have legacy support for your application, if your application still works on NTLM version 1 or the legacy Kerberos versions of protocol, you can also go and enable the previous versions. This is mainly to help your application support the legacy authentication and authorization. But if your applications are working on latest version, then it is well and good. See, that is what Microsoft also recommends, to use the latest version as much as possible to avoid any vulnerability or any security loophole. So you always have to go and discuss with your business application owners to understand what NTLM versions and Kerberos they are dependent on. Okay, so let's see, there is something which is missing under the basic screen. Okay, so it is asking for the domain name. So we will change this domain name because we already created it. I'll change it. Just a second. So I'll change that name. Okay, so we will wait for this one also to complete. Okay, the installation is now complete, whereas the promotion of the server to a domain controller, it's not yet completed. You can click on this link, or you have a symbol here, notification symbol, where you can go and continue the configuration here. So I can just give some name. So I'll give Azure with stan dot on-prem. We can just say local, or you can just give some name. Okay, so just a second, I will see what domains have got active. Let me just, no, this is on incognito. Just a second, let me reshare my screen. I just want to see what are the domains that I have active. Okay, I'm just sharing my screen again. Please place a dot at the end of the car's path. Okay, 1 second. So generally, I go and purchase the domains in Hostinger um, or GoDaddy or this Freenom. Freenom is where you get the free domains for your usage. You can go and create some free domain and practice for the Active Directory or similar concept. Okay, now I have logged into this Freenom site using my Google Mail ID, and I'm just going to see what are the domains that I've purchased. So there are a couple of domains that are active until end of this year. Okay, I think skillupwithstan.ga is available. So what I will do is I'll just create the domain with skillupwithstan.local. Purposefully, I'm using a different name. Okay, you can use the same name. Okay, you can also use .ga, but then in most of the organization, this internet concept or cloud concept has come very recently, right? But we might have a domain name which is not aligned to this internet standard. So I'm just going to have a different name on the premises, like a .local or .on-prem or whatever, and I can just go and create it. I'm going to create a new forest. I don't have any existing forest. Neither a domain I don't have. So if you want to select legacy versions of functional level based on your application requirement, you can go and choose the older functional level. So this is mainly to restore your directory services. If in case your Active Directory is corrupted, if you want to restore, you have to use this credential. This is mainly for that. So NetBIOS domain name is the same name as that of your domain. So you can also change it. So when you log into your computer, you get two options, right? You can enter the domain name, or you can use the domain name from the drop down. So you can change this if you want. Okay, so this is what I was telling you, right? In general, when you deploy your Active Directory, we go and change the partitions. So as a best practice, your log file and database should be on a different directory. In on-premises, we generally choose D drive for database, E drive for log, and F drive for sysvol. So log files and sysvol can stay together, but database and logs should have to be separated from each other. So here, this is a demo, right? I'm just going with the same C drive. I have not created additional drive. But in on-premises, we have to get them separated to avoid any potential impact. Yeah. So once after we click install, the server will automatically get rebooted to complete the process. Okay, so let's say install, and we will go for the break now. Okay, any questions so far on the three variant that we have? Okay, fine. If there are no questions, I'll
Yes.
stop there. Yeah, go ahead.
So earlier there's a technology for FSMO role.
Mhm.
Now it's the role is transferred to Microsoft Intra or they are decom.
Okay, see, you are referring to Microsoft on-premises Active Directory, right? This flexible single master role or FSMO role.
Yes, correct.
Okay, see that FSMO role, it's mainly to do certain activities. See, once after you promote your Windows server as Active Directory domain controller, see on your on-premises, this domain controller, which is handling or managing your ADDS, can do multiple sub role or multiple specific functions. So that functions are called as flexible single master owner, or they call it as FSMO role. So we have 5 different roles within that. I think we have this domain naming master, schema master.
Master.
Yeah, so those are all something which is specific to your on-premises. I think RID, PID, infrastructure master. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm giving the 5 correct things, but this is specifically for your on-premises validation,
AD.
identification, on-premises FSMO role. See, this is applicable only for your on-premises where you have multiple servers, where you have full control on your database. If you have multiple domain controllers, these different roles takes care of the replication, because Active Directory on your premises is a multi-master database where you have multiple domain controllers, primary, secondary, or primary additional domain controllers or backup domain controller. So we have to have a multi-master enabled database where we have to have replication, synchronization, and there will be conflict if a particular system. So when you go with the multi-master concepts, or if you are talking about on-premises Active Directory, these 5 different roles plays a variety of job role. So the schema master is mainly for if you want to do some updates to your schema, if you want to add some attributes, you need to have the schema master available on your network. And if you want to do some kind of making changes to your forest wide domain name, or if you want to change the domain name, you need to have access to your domain naming master. So similarly, like if you want to, if there are some new users getting created, and if you want to provide some SID, security identifier, or RID for each service account or security principal, this RID master will issue the IDs for each of your objects getting created. We call it as a RID master or SID master because it issues the security principle for each of your objects getting created. So the next one, not PID, it's not PID, it is PDC emulator, I guess, if I'm not wrong. So this PDC emulator generally does your replication, Kerberos authentication, time synchronization between your systems. So a lot of activities, any passwords, if you are changing on one domain controller, all those changes should have to be replicated to other domain controllers and so on. So this PDC emulator takes care of time synchronization, password synchronization, and so on. Last one, I think infrastructure master, right? Infrastructure master, if I recollect, it is mainly I mean, I don't recall it correctly. I think it is integrated, it is associated with your global catalog role, if I'm not wrong. But these are all something not necessary for your public cloud concept, Azure AD or Azure AD domain services. But these used to
Oh,
be there in your Windows Server Active Directory on premises. When you have you need to manage the multi-master Active Directory database or multi-master replication between your multiple domain controllers. So these roles are within your ADDS. Domain controller has these many functions.
Okay,
Don't,
okay,
yeah, yeah.
fine.
Don't
So
confuse
these
with these different role. These are all different, but within ADDS, within your domain controller, you have 5 various functions that your domain controller used to perform in your on-premises.
so normally if we go for interviews, first
Mm.
question they'll ask for this one.
Oh, AD
So
interview. Okay, okay, fine, fine. Yeah, that is true. I mean, those days have gone. Okay, so we are now into modern database or cloud. Yeah, cloud directory. On your on-premises, you are right. Yeah, they used to ask questions about. See, I used to take classes on Active Directory in 2005 to 2008. I was a AD instructor in a couple of centers, so I know AD to some extent. But yeah, nowadays this is not needed in cloud Active Directory. It is a managed identity or
in that,
managed directory solution. It's a managed domain. So the backend replication or specific function that you are asking about, it is taken care by Microsoft only. So Microsoft manages these roles. You don't have
yeah,
access to
fine.
those roles. Fine, let me stop the record. Okay, before the break, we were trying to install a particular role on a Windows Server. And now if you look at the login here, the certificate says the server name dot the domain name. You can just log in. So you can use the domain name or you can also use the NetBIOS name for logging in. So now you are logged into the Windows Server, which has been promoted as a domain controller. Now, if you look at the start menu, you will start seeing a lot of additional administration tools that is for managing your Active Directory. So you can see that Active Directory Administration Center is there, and also we have different console to manage users, computers, sites, domains, trust relationship, and so on. And also here in your server manager, you will see a new entry called Active Directory Domain Services. This is what we installed now. You can also access it from the tools menu where you can go and select administration center if you want to do all the activities in one place. If you want to manage users and computers, you can just open that console and you will be able to access it. You can also do that here. You can just right click and then you will be able to access the same set of activities. Here, the advantage of using this ADDS Server Manager console, you will also be able to do a lot of execution. If you want to do some domain join, or if you want to do a net logon test, if you want to check the replication, or if you want to do a diagnostics, you have access to all the executables from here from the console itself. Okay, that is another advantage of using the ADDS console option here. Okay, so now I have just opened up the Active Directory users and computers where you have access to the hierarchical database. As I told you earlier, you can go and do a hierarchical arrangement. In a lot of organization, they will have new structure like this. So they used to create different groups and stuff. They will also have new OU to hierarchically organize. So they will say Americas, and within that they will have different countries. They will also have, I mean, it depends on company to company. Some companies will create organization unit based on the regional support, or some companies they will have an OU created aligned to their business unit or department and so on. So it depends on case to case. You can do a hierarchical arrangement, and within that you can go and start storing your users, groups, and different objects. So for example, within that you can have users, and you can have computers, you can have printers, you can have different applications, and so on. So this is how we generally hierarchically organize the different objects in on-premises Windows Server AD. So this is a hierarchical database or hierarchical structure. Whereas in Azure Active Directory, or let's start using the new name in Microsoft Entra, we don't have a hierarchical database. Instead, we go and create users groups in a flat directory. Okay, let me show you that. Okay, let this come. Let me just go to home. Go to Entra ID, Microsoft Entra ID. This is the Azure Active Directory new name. So here you have the flat directory structure. If you want to create user, you just go and create it. You don't have option to go and create OU or substructure within that. It is directly creating users and groups in the default flat directory. But then in on-premises, you have the option to organize your different objects in a hierarchical structure aligned to your business operations or departments or governance mechanism. So now, by default, you will have some users and groups created and available in your system. The default stan user, which was a local administrator, is now part of your Active Directory domain. If you want to create more users, you can start creating it from the graphical console, or just for the interest of time, if you want to create some users quickly, you can just create something like this. Okay, so let me try to create a couple of users, and then we will okay, we'll just have only, then maybe we'll create 5 users and couple of groups. Okay, so this is mainly to, these are all whatever we are doing now, it's identity, right? It is mainly for authentication. Username and password can only do authentication. We will also discuss more around authorization. Role-based access control will be the focus for tomorrow's session. Okay, so let me, okay, this 5 users we have created, and let's also create group. So for group, we don't have need to have password. It's a kind of grouping. Let's say net user group. I will just say India users, and I will say Singapore users, and maybe we can create one more, global users, just for our understanding. Okay, fine. So we have created a few users and a couple of groups from the command line, and you can see those are now available in your AD console. Okay, so we have got some users and groups that you have created. Even you can do the same if you want to. So graphically, you can just create some users if you want, and you can also enter whatever details that you want. So here I've got this only one domain, and I'll talk about this listing. Okay, let me just give some credential. Okay, I just don't want to change the password. Okay, sorry. Fine. So what I will do is I'll make these users a member of different group. I'll just say Nasser is a member of Singapore users, and similarly I'll just say Madhavan is a member of Singapore users. Remaining, I will just say everyone is part of your regular group. Let's say Muhammad. You can also do the other way around. You can go to the group. Let's say where is India users. So you can go here, and you can also add members if you want. So I will just add Muhammad. Maybe again I'll add Nasser as part of the India user. He will be part of both the groups. So I will add Sendil. I will add Siva. So I think comma does not work. It will accept semicolon if I'm not wrong. Let's try that. Just a second. Okay, so we have added 4 users as part of this India group. Okay, so that's for our verification after synchronization from on-premises to cloud. We will verify whether these groups are part of the, these users are part of the same group. Okay, so we have got some users and groups to deal with. Now, what I'm going to do is from my on-premises location, okay, we have a Windows Server Active Directory. Okay, we have a VM which is having Windows Server operating system, and also it has got AD installed Active Directory. Okay, now what I want to do is I have created some users and groups. For what purpose? To authenticate and authorize against different systems in the on-premises network. So to access my on-premises application or on-premises printer or servers or whatever different stuffs. So I've created this particular identity, okay, to access different stuffs. So it may be your application, on-prem applications, or on-premises devices, printers, servers, network, and so on. Okay, so let's have this users access the cloud application also. So if you want to have the same users and group access to both on-premises application and the application that is on the cloud. Okay, you've got some cloud applications like Microsoft 365 or Intune, or you have Workday or Concur. There are many different cloud applications that are on the internet. And if you want to use the same users and groups to access the intranet application and the internet application, what you can do is you can configure a replication from on-premises to the cloud. So it used to be Azure Active Directory before, but now it has been changed to Microsoft Entra ID, right? To Azure AD or Microsoft Entra ID. So if you want to replicate from on-premises to the Azure AD database solution, so Microsoft has given a tool called Azure Active Directory Connect. If you want to extend your on-premises Active Directory database or users and groups to on cloud solution or cloud identity solution, you can use this AD Connect tool. So you can go and download that tool from internet directly, or you can also download it from the Azure AD console. Okay, the only thing that you need to ensure, you need to download the latest version and use it. Okay, so let me just confirm and start browsing. So here I will just go for Azure AD Connect download. So let me connect and download from the official website. So for legacy operating system, you can also use the version 1, but you have to generally use the latest one, the latest AD Connect tool. So AD Connect version 2. Okay, fine. Okay, let me open the file. I have downloaded the AD Connect version 2 file. So obviously they have to change the name to Microsoft Entra ID Connect, but still now we have this Azure AD Connect. So this is mainly to integrate your on-premises directory, which is Windows Server Active Directory, with Azure Active Directory or Microsoft Entra ID. So whatever users groups that you have created on your premises, now it will get replicated to cloud solution. So the tool name is Azure AD Connect. Obviously, they will change it to Microsoft Entra ID Connect in the near future. As of now, it is still having the old name. So it will get changed very soon. So this is integrating your on-premises Windows Server AD with Azure Active Directory. That is the purpose of that tool. So let's understand the system requirement. It needs these operating system. You need minimum of Windows Server 2016 to install Azure AD Connect. Otherwise, it won't work. You cannot have legacy operating system. You need minimum of Windows Server 2016 to install the version 2. Okay, and also you have the installation instructions which you can follow along to install it, and also you have some hardware requirement listed in this particular site. Okay, based on the number of objects that are going to get replicated and synchronized, you can go and understand the sizing and get it done. So now you have this console. The very first time what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the default integration or default synchronization. I'm not going to get deep into the options. Tomorrow when we come back again, I'll tell you what are the different specific options that we have for customization. Now I'll go with the default setup, which is express setting. I will just install using the express setting. What it will do is, currently I have a single forest or a single active directory forest on my premises. If you look at here, it has already picked up the name of my AD forest. So my AD forest name is SkillUp So wherever you are installing and running, so you can run this particular AD Connect on the domain controller itself, or if you are having a very large environment, you can also run it on any member server. Member server is any server joined to the domain that you are replicating. So you can also install this in a member server, or you can also install it on the Active Directory domain controller system itself. But the preference in an enterprise, you always go with the member server and install it. So it will pick up the domain which your system is joined to. And by default, all your password hash synchronization will happen. Okay, when I say password hash synchronization, it will not replicate the actual password. Instead, it will create a hash value against each of your password. Only the hash value will get replicated or synchronized. Okay, I'll talk about this in little more detail, because we have variety of synchronization option. By default, we'll have an initial synchronization. All the attributes will get synchronized using this express setting. Now you have to connect two different directory solution. So you are connecting your on-premises Windows Server AD is one solution. This is one directory or database you have to connect, and on the other side you have to connect it with Azure AD or Microsoft Entra ID, right? You have to connect here. So in order to connect to these two different directory solution, the cloud directory and on-premises directory, so what you need to have is, we need to have some credential. So here we need to have enterprise admin rights to connect on the premises. Here on the cloud, we need to have the ADDS or Azure AD domains, Azure AD credential. So one second, I think it is global administrator, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, we need to have global administrator credentials or global administrator privileges to connect this Azure AD. Okay, just a second. Okay, fine. So now on your Azure AD Global Administrator, I can just go and create some credential. So I might have existing credential, but I will create something new for your understanding. So I will create a new user, create new user. I will call him as maybe, let's use some new names. So I will use Balaji for an example. Okay. This is a account that I'm creating on my cloud. This account, I'm going to use it as a global admin. Okay, I'm going to give him global admin privileges. So this is fine, this is fine. So I'm going to give the display name as Balaji. Password, I can just copy the password. Okay, account enabled, fine. So here I'm going to give, if I want to add first name, last name, and additional details, I can also just do that. So this is just a user account, which is a member account. And here I'm going to give him a particular permission or role. I'm going to give him global administrator role. Okay, so this is the role which gives you access to all aspects of Microsoft Entra ID or Azure Active Directory, as well as all the Microsoft services. This is the maximum privileges that an user can have. So you can have, there is a limitation. So I've just added the group here, or I've given the role as global admin for Balaji. And now, before you use that account on your premises, generally Microsoft encourages you to change the password before you use that active account. Okay, so if you want to verify that, what I can do is I can just go and open up a new incognito window. here I will just say not accounts dot Windows Azure. Sorry, I forgot it. There is a portal which can be used. Mm, Accounts. I think let's try this. I don't think I've entered the right one, but let's see. No, not this one. Sign in with a different account. What does that ID? No, sorry, one second. I forgot that link. One minute. Microsoft online account management link. Accounts.microsoft.com. No, not that. Support. Does anyone remember? Okay, let me just see. Accounts dot. Or else let's do one thing. Okay, let me try to log into portal only. So there is a different link, okay, which I will tell you once after I remember it. There is a login through which you can reset it. Now let me just log out, sign in with a different account. I will use a different account. I will paste the name, click next, and then I'll enter the password. Okay, sign in. Okay, see, that's what I was telling you, right? Generally, they will advise you to change the password. So let me just change one character. Okay, fine. Yeah, so you can actually enable multi-factor authentication. Okay, you can integrate your Microsoft Authenticator. That's what I was telling you, right? You can go for multi-factor authentication. I'll do it later. But for now, okay, so this account has got the privileges. Okay, I'm able to log in with that account, and I will also show you there is another link through which you can manage the accounts. I'm not sure. Let's see. I think so, Rajesh. You are right. Thank you for that. Admin.microsoft.com. Yeah, I think this is the account if I'm not wrong. Yeah, you can also use this. Admin.microsoft.com. So here you will be able to administer what are the different permissions and stuff you have got. Yeah, this is right. So this is also a good. This is mainly for Microsoft 365 or Office 365. There is one more link that I will also give you. Okay, so this is admin.microsoft.com, which is something you can use, or you can also use some. There is one more link which I will provide by tomorrow. Okay, now the thing is we have to use the global administrator ID which you have created on your premises. So I will enter that, and you will have to enter the credential which has got the global administrator. See, if you read that here, it should be either Azure AD Global Administrator or Hybrid Identity Administrator role should be available for that user. Okay, so we have given the credential, it is examining the domain, it will go and verify whether that particular, yeah, it is verified. Now on the premises, you need to have an account with enterprise admin credential on your on premises. So go here. So let us create one account. I will create a new account here. We will call this account as maybe Jagan. Okay, and then okay, fine. Let's have Jagan. Click next. User must, the password never expires. Okay, fine. Finish it off. Now I will add this user as a member of enterprise administrator. Okay, done. Apply. Okay. So now I will use that account for this particular stuff. See, either you can just give Jagan at skillup with stan.local, or you can also go with skillup with stan. You can use the NetBIOS name followed by the username, or you can use the domain name format, whichever you want to use. You can use either of them. So now it will go and verify whether Jagan has got permission. Yes, he has got permission. Now, if you look at here, it is showing a particular warning. Okay, it says your current UPN has got only skillup with stan.local, whereas this domain is not a verified domain in your public cloud. So what is the verified domain that we have got here? Here, if you go and check, so currently in my Active Directory, here, if I go to the domain section, okay, see, I've got skillup with stan.ga, skillup with stan.tk, and different domains which are verified. And on the premises, you don't have it. See, if you want to have the same domain name for your user, one thing that you can do a bulk update for your on-premises. So first thing, you have to go to your Windows Administrative Tools and go to your Azure Active Directory Domains and Trust. Here, under the properties, no, not here, sorry. So here under the properties of your AD domains and trust, you can have additional suffix for your users. So if I want to have something like skillup with stan.ga, or what are the other ones I have verified? Skillup with stan.tk, or whatever you want to add, you can add those entries here. Okay, you can also add Azure with stan.com, skillup with stan dot tk. So you can just keep adding additional suffix or domains. So where exactly this is going to be used? For example, if I go and create new additional users, or if I want to modify users, see, in your drop down you will get all those UPN suffix. So that is the advantage of adding that there. If you want to match your on-premises domain with the public cloud domain, you can also add the UPN suffix, and when you replicate or synchronize the users, for example, let's say Nasser, I want to change that account to be with skillup.stan.ga. I can also update it. I can also use some PowerShell script to update all your users with the new suffix or new domain. So I will just have only a couple of users I will have for now, just for our testing purpose. So Madhavan and Nasser account will have the domain as skillup.stan.ga, whereas the other account will have conflict. And what will happen for that account? For example, for Siva, for Muhammad, the domain name will be Madhavan at, sorry, not Madhavan, Muhammad at Aravali Hotmail at on microsoft.com. So this is the domain that it will pick up when there is a conflict. So now let's go and do that. Okay, let's go and take a step back on this console, go one step back, and then try to log in again. And then now it will go and check all your UPN suffix, and it will list down which ones are verified in the destination. In the destination, so as I showed you, these two domains are already verified. Okay, if I want to delete some unwanted domain, I can also delete it anytime. See, for example, these ones I'm not using anymore. I can just delete them. So you can see that the same list, you are able to see it in the Azure AD Connect tool. So these are the domains that are already verified in the destination. These are all not verified. If you have a unverified UPN suffix, what it will do is it will convert the users with the unverified suffix to the destination UPN suffix. So I can just continue without matching all the UPN suffix and then click on next. So only for Nasser and Madhavan, it will have at the skillup.stan.ga. It's a verified domain. For rest, it will be under conflict and it will change to the destination domain. So let me start the synchronization process. Now it will install a kind of Microsoft SQL database behind the scene, and the agent will start adding some additional users here in your Azure AD. See, it has created a replication role. Okay, and it will start replicating. Let us give a couple of minutes for this replication to continue. So to summarize, okay, let me just go back, refresh. Yeah, we have deleted that, right? Fine. So to summarize, Azure AD Connect is a integration tool. Integration tool for what? It it is mainly for integrating your on-premises. It is a connector or integration tool between on-prem Windows Server AD solution with Microsoft Entra ID solution. This is nothing but your so-called Azure Active Directory in the past. Okay, and whatever credentials or authentication stuffs, identity that you have created, all those identities and attributes will get replicated, or I would say synchronized to cloud directory. So at least for next few months, we will we will use both the terms Azure AD or the Microsoft Entra ID until Microsoft completely removes this Azure AD terminology. Okay, so this is mainly to simplify the way that you replicate, synchronize, administer, manage your on-premises object. Okay, let's see whether the users are getting populated now. So it is still creating a Azure AD synchronization account. See, if I go to my cloud account, here I will see that it will create a account for doing the replication. So that is what we call it a service account or managed ID, right? So it is creating a kind of service account. See, if you look at here, it has created a synchronization account with the server name. Whatever server name we have got, it will create a new account on premises directory synchronization service account. So this is the account that it has created. How did I identify it? See, it will have the server name in that account. So using that, you will be able to identify which domain controller is replicating or which domain controller has started replicating. See, that is what we are seeing here, right? It created a service account to do the replication or synchronization. Now, it has started installing the Active Directory Connect health agent on your on-premises data center. See, if you look at here, it will start adding some additional tools here. So synchronization service, Azure AD Connect, synchronization rules editor. So you can see that it is adding up some new tools to monitor the synchronization. It is adding up a health agent to check whether your objects are properly getting replicated. So once after the agent is installed and it is configured, it will start sending the objects. It will start finding out which objects has been created, and it will start replicating. Now it has completed the configuration. See, since we have integrated two different solution, what they are telling us to enable Active Directory recycle bin. You can go and enable it on your premises because there will be conflict, right? Some users might get created in another directory, so there will be a conflicting situation. Some objects might accidentally get deleted. So Microsoft is recommending us to go and enable this AD recycle bin on your on-premises data center. So it is now connected. Now it is saying the configuration is done. You can log in with the account that you have created on the premises to Microsoft Office or Office 365, and you can start using it. So let's go and check that, okay, whether the users have come here. See, as of now, it is not showing up. If I say refresh, it will start showing up. So if I scroll down, you can see whatever accounts we have created. Okay, let's see. So it has got too many accounts. Let's see, we can go and search for the account. Let's say what are the accounts we created. We created Madhavan, Siva. Okay, let's search for Madhavan first. See, it is here. And for Madhavan, it is having skillabistan.ga. And let's try for Muhammad. Muhammad will have different domain name. See, I said, right? Since it is conflicting with on-premises and cloud, it will go and take the default domain name of the destination domain. And similarly for Nasser, it will have skillabistan.ga. That did not have conflict. So you can differentiate on-premises account with the cloud account using this particular column. So this is saying on-premises sync enabled account, right? So if I just filter by that, or if I just say manage view and edit the columns, I will just go and okay, on-premises sync is already added. So what I will do is I'll just filter it here. I will just say accounts which are from on-premises sync enabled. I'll just say apply. So now you will see only the account that has been replicated from the on-premises. See, it is here. Madhavan, Mohammed, Nasser. And if I scroll down, I can see Siva, Sai.
Uh,
Yeah, go ahead.
Stand on question here. Yeah. This on-prem enabled is coming after you added this UPN
No, it is
or
mainly Azure
by
AD
default.
Connect. Azure AD Connect will do that replication and synchronization. See, I want to show you if there is a conflict in your organization, how do you deal with that? That is the reason I showed you how to change the UPN suffix to match the destination cloud domain. Okay, if you want to have your existing users match their destination domain, so I changed the UPN suffix to match that. See, for example, wherever I updated the domain, it has got the same exact domain from your on-premises, whereas the domain which was not verified on the destination, it has taken the destination domain name. So Muhammad user account had a different domain name which was not a verified domain name in Microsoft Entra ID. So that is the reason it has taken another destination verified domain.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Now,
by default,
mm,
the user we created in on-prem,
mhm.
after this Azure AD Connect we are using, so it will by default it will sync,
Correct, true. Yeah, it will
right?
automatically start synchronizing. Yeah. So now the question was asked by Sendil, right? I will also create one more account and then see, it will look out for periodical updates. Okay, so let's say I've created one more account called Sendil, and by default, it will start replicating every 30 minutes. That is the interval. It will go and check. You can change that. Okay, so it says already exist. Okay, fine. So instead, I will create a different account. I will just create it as Rajesh. Okay, fine. So it will replicate in the next cycle. So where do I see that? I'll show you how to find out the replication and the time synchronization. Now under the groups, I should see two groups or three groups, right? Singapore users, India users, and the other one is a global user. Yeah, so global user, Singapore user. If I go to Singapore user, I should see the members like Madhavan and Nasser, right? And for the India users, I should see many different people, right? Go to members. I should see Mohammed Nasser, Sindil Siva, right? This is what we did in on-premises. That membership and attributes, whatever we have entered, it should be completely intact after the replication. Now, whatever subsequent additions or changes that I'm making, I have to go and check the replication synchronization service where it will tell us what is the next synchronization time. Currently, it has synchronized at 2:21 p.m. in this local machine, right? So it will replicate the next set of users at around 2:51. Okay, either we can wait for that or you can manually go and initiate the synchronization. You can run the synchronization now. See, if I want to find out what are the list of users that were replicated and if there was any error, you can go and check the replication log, or you can go and check this particular export. Okay, so if you look at here, it has done a full synchronization, right? I can click on this projections and then find out which are the users that are getting replicated. So you can see the name here, right? Jagan, Nasser, Madhavan, Mohammed, Sindal, Anto. So these are the accounts and also the groups that we created, and these are the stuffs which has got replicated. And if something is missing there, you will be able to identify the reason for that from the logs repository. Okay, you can find out the complete data here. If I want to just do a ad hoc replication, I can also go and do a replication now, and it will do a delta sync or a full sync if you want to do. Okay, I can just initiate a delta synchronization manually to replicate the newly added objects from on-premises to the cloud. By default, there is a default interval which is 30 minutes. If I want to change that, I can use command line PowerShell commandlet to change it. Azure AD synchronization interval command. So if you want to change the sync interval, this is the command that I have to use. Set AD sync scheduler. By default, it is 30 minutes. Once it will replicate. If I want to change it to 15 minutes, if you have an organization where you frequently change or add users or stuff, then you need to go and change it, or else don't change it. It will unnecessarily keep replicating or synchronizing. See, some organization will have the practice of onboarding new users every Tuesday or every Wednesday or only 2 days in a week. So what you can do is you can replicate only during that particular days also. So it all depends on organization to organization, how frequently they add new users and stuff. So you can add this command, or you can run this command to change the default synchronization. Okay, that option I will show you how to change it. So if you want to get the current synchronization, let me go one step back. So this is the command, get AD sync scheduler. So you can change it. So by default, it is that is 30 minutes once. But if you want to change it to every 20 minutes or stuff, you can change it. So currently, instead of setting it, I'm going to get the details. So it should be every 30 minutes by default. That is the synchronization schedule. And if I want to set it to a different time, I can change it. See, currently it is set to every 30 minutes, it is changing. And if I want to change it, I can enter in this format. So in this format, I can just change it. So every 1 hour or every 30 minutes or every few seconds, if you want to change it, you can just set it. Instead of get, I can just go and say set and then change whatever frequency you want. So there is a command to change that. If you want to increase the frequency or decrease the frequency once in a week or once in a day or something like that. So based on the synchronization tool, it has synchronized the objects. Okay, that is where I showed you, right, which are the objects that got synchronized. So it will replicate the new user whichever we have created after 30 minutes or whatever. If you want to do a ad hoc sync, you can also do that manually. So we are at 8 o'clock. Any questions so far on the on-premises Windows Server Active Directory? We have installed Azure AD Connect to integrate it with Cloud Directory. Tomorrow when we come back, we will understand more about what is Microsoft Entra ID, what is Azure Active Directory, and what are the different options we can play around with that. And we are also yet to complete this one. Okay, so we are yet to do this. See, for example, if I want to run this will take some time. Okay, so let me just give some name and then let it run. So behind the scenes, if I just go and review and create it, it will start creating 2 domain controllers for me in Microsoft Entra domain services or Azure AD domain services. So let me do that tomorrow. I don't want to create it now and waste some cost here. So I'll create it tomorrow. So any questions?
Stan,
Yeah, go ahead.
how this Office 365 works? Stan? So do we have any Azure account also there?
No. So
All
Azure,
our Office
yeah,
365
see this Azure AD, right? Azure AD or so-called Microsoft Entra ID. This is this complete entrance or the complete single point of identity and access management for all Microsoft commercial cloud offering products. So this Azure AD or the newer version Microsoft Entra ID, it's used for authentication and authorization. So it is the IAM solution for Microsoft Azure. Microsoft 365 or Office 365, Intune, Dynamics, or any internet online application. So Azure AD is not only for Azure, it is for cross-platform. So you can use the same identity and access management for Workplace, ServiceNow, Workday, MyDay, Concur, Salesforce. So you can use the Azure Online Directory solution to access any online internet application, including Microsoft Azure and Microsoft 365.
So
We'll
defaultly, if an office has an Office 365, it means that it has an account in Azure AD also.
True. That is the
Suppose
case. Yeah.
if it is an organization working, okay,
Mhm.
I have an Office 365. It means that my account is replicated in Azure AD.
True. See, when you go and subscribe for any solution from Microsoft, by default, it goes and creates a Azure AD tenant. So that I will kind of explain. So I will explain what exactly is Azure AD tenant. And yeah, the understanding is correct. Okay. So when you go and subscribe for Microsoft 365 or Azure, by default, you will get a tenant created in Azure AD and you will get a directory created within that Azure AD for each and every customer. Yeah.
Okay.
So that is what I'm going to explain tomorrow. I'll explain what exactly Azure Tenant, Azure AD Directory, or Microsoft Entra ID Directory is what about, and then we will continue from there. So today we have just discussed about what exactly is the basics of identity and access management solution. We have discussed what is AD, and then what are the different varieties or variants of AD that we have, and we started deploying an infrastructure as a service offering. We just went ahead and created an Azure VM and we enabled Windows Server AD. We replicated that Windows Server AD objects from on-premises to Azure AD using Azure AD Connect. So when we come back tomorrow, we will see the practical for Azure AD domain services, and we will also discuss more about Azure AD, followed by role-based access control. So we have just dealt only the half the portion, identity alone. The access management, the authorization, we have not discussed yet. So we will see that RBAC as well as Azure AD tomorrow. No questions, right? Tamil இருந்தாலும் கேட்கலாம். Feel free to ask questions in Tamil also. Okay, so then,
Okay, sir.
okay, then I'll stop the recording.